Well, thankfully, it's not just me this week. The boys have actually managed to turn up. We have with us today, we've got Arj manning the modding and the chat. We've got Sound. Say hello,
Hello.
Sound.
Hello, everyone.
Bear. We've got Yosh. We've
Hello.
got tech guy Colin doing the techie stuff. And we have Tilson with us again.
Guys, there are zombies outside my door.
Oh no! Oh no!
I'm still here. I'm not a zombie.
Zombies here to interrupt the
But-
news.
Chris, do you have a substantial flower bed to keep them at bay for the next 10 minutes or so?
No, I have no plants.
Oh!
You're doomed.
Okay, we may lose Chris during the rest of
He
the
may
show,
get lost.
Do you at least
Yeah.
have an extra layer of lawnmowers?
No.
I got a suggestion. There's a game going on Twitter sometimes where people ask if there's a zombie outbreak, use whatever is on your left as your weapon. So people in the chat, what's on your left side? What is your weapon against a zombie outbreak?
A barometer.
The guy
My
who
weapon
helped
is
me
an
move.
electric.
I've got my new copy of Geoscientist.
Mine
got
is
an
an
electric razor.
Lego
Okay.
crocodile.
Right, anyway, we need to get cracking with the news because we've got 2 or 3 bits of news and a funky, interesting announcement to make for our final bit. So, who's going first with the news?
I would if I could remember what it was. I've had a bit too much to drink today. In case you weren't aware,
Oh, yeah.
first bit of news is
we
it's
need to
my
say
birthday.
happy birthday to Sound. Yeah, he got older.
Happy birthday to you.
You squash
Happy
tomatoes and
birthday
stew,
to
and we're not going to bother singing. So, I
Oh,
want
this-
to.
We can't
Sorry.
because it's not public domain.
The first bit of news was the Sean Hannity show that took place about a week ago.
Yes.
Because Yosh has just made the fatal mistake of tuning in to Republican Family Radio on his drive home.
I'll admit that when I drive to and from college, I like to listen to conservative talk radio because usually I like to get a good laugh, but usually I just end up pissed off.
Oh, check out the video feed, guys.
Oh, thank you, Colin.
Oh, bless.
You'll be pleased to know, Womble, I had a geology outing for my birthday today, and I've got you some
Woohoo!
rhyolite.
So anyway, Hannity.
Hannity, yes. So we've got a little audio clip to play you in just a second. But basically, in the run-up to this, during his, I think it's a 3-hour show, but he was saying that people who live on state welfare in the United States, most of them spend that money on drugs. And if we don't actually have the audio of him saying that, but I don't think he would have any problem in repeating that. And indeed, on his webpage, the radio webpage, he's written an article which says just about the same thing. And then the clip that I'm about to play you is somebody who called into the show, and they cite a study which suggests that people who are on people who are on state welfare actually have a lower drug incidence than the population in general. And I just want you to listen to Hannity's response. And there's going to be a little bit of feedback for just a second. And here is the clip. It's only about 2 or 3 minutes.
All right, 800-941. Sean, you want to be a part of the program. Chuck Atlanta. Chuck, you're on the Sean Hannity Show. News Talk, WSB, AM and FM. Sir, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
Well, I hear a lot of talk about class warfare, and I know Republicans are for smaller government, but then I looked to Florida, what the governor did down there.
Governor Scott?
He created a new bureaucracy and came out, and whether or not he tests welfare recipients or not, but he came out and said that welfare recipients tend to have a higher drug addiction, which I think is class warfare because he was proven to be wrong. And
Proven to be wrong by who?
by the statistics that came back when they did the survey and when they tested people, according to the survey, the
What
welfare
survey?
recipients.
What survey?
It wasn't a survey. It was
Wasn't a survey.
It was according to the results.
What results? Of what were results of who?
Positive drug people that tested positive on welfare. According to that, the number of people that were tested the number of the percentage is smaller than in the normal society.
And did they test the quote? I'll use your words, normal society, and you're going to. So you're saying that people on welfare are not normal, but that's if that's the way you want as a liberal characterize them, I think they're normal.
They're better than normal.
Now let me ask you a question. I just need one little fact here. Just tell me where I can find this survey, as you call it, or whatever you want to call it, this study, and tell me where the study is so I can look at it myself.
Yeah, the Miami Herald.
The Miami Herald, and what's the date?
There's a gentleman, a writer from the paper down there, has challenged all the state legislators, since they are the recipients for a huge amount of state money, challenged them to take a drug test. And only 2 have, and this guy said he'll pay for the test. He'll pay for every member's test. Only 2 have come forward and agreed to be tested. So, I mean, that would be fair, wouldn't it, Sean? Wouldn't you support something like that?
Can I just say something? I think this is ridiculous because I don't think there's any such study, Chuck, that's ever taken place. This is the problem. As a columnist said, now look, I'm going to tell you something. Here's a reality. You can argue both ways of this. You can argue that probably illicit drug use in poor neighborhoods, there are socioeconomic factors that contribute to drug use, are greater. But then I think you can make an argument, drug use, how do you define it? I mean, there are a lot of people in a lot of rich neighborhoods that find themselves addicted to drugs or alcohol, etc., and it transcends socioeconomic boundaries. Addiction is addiction. And so I'm not really sure as in terms of an argument that is made that people that receive free government handouts, that we want to determine that they are not using that money, hard-earned money of other people, to fuel their drug or alcohol abuse.
I'm going to pause it there because basically he goes on to say the same thing over again. He's basically denying that this study ever existed. And Yosh, I think you want to talk for a little moment about what that study actually did and what it said.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was, I believe, earlier this year or at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. I don't remember which one, but Rick Scott, the governor of Florida, decided that he wanted to drug test the state's welfare recipients so that if they were caught doing drugs, that they would lose their welfare status, because he, like most Republicans, thinks that most of the welfare people are there because they're just a bunch of drug addicts. And after the drug testing company, which him and his wife own, by the way, big surprise, came back with the results showed that 2 to 4% of the people on welfare, only 2 to 4% of the people on welfare actually tested positive for drugs, which is actually a smaller percentage than the average population as a whole.
Yeah, because what is astonishing, this is why I brought it up, is that it's an appalling example of bad skepticism. But he denied out of hand that this study had ever taken place, and all I needed to do was type in Miami Herald drug and welfare into Google, and it's the top search that's there. And the site says preliminary figures show that about 2.5% of up to 2,000 applicants for temporary assistance for needy families tested positive. Another 2% declined to take the test. So if you give them not the benefit of the doubt, but whatever the opposite is, but if you assume that all of those 2% were drug positive, that adds up to a 4.5% total. And then it also says the Justice Department estimates that 6% of Americans 12 and older use illegal drugs. So this study, and I'm not denying that maybe there are other studies which show that result, but Hannity was more than happy to dismiss that out of hand, even though the evidence quite obviously states otherwise and does exist.
Might I say that the study was paid for with taxpayer money, so the state is out about $40,000.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that the people who were part of the study for getting the benefits, they had to pay for the test, and if they passed it, they were reimbursed for it. So the amount of money that they were really saving on denying benefits was about equal to the amount of money they have to spend on those tests for the people who passed. So it really was a wash, and it just made things more difficult for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, sorry, did I interrupt someone?
No.
No? Okay. So that was some wonderful cleverness from Hannity, and who was going to deal with the drama llama infestation?
Oh, we could all chip in on this one, to be honest.
Yeah, because we've all noticed that there's been a mass infestation of drama llamas on YouTube.
It's back to the good old days when DMCAs and flags just used to fly around the tubes. I think that probably the most important one we want to discuss first is Potholer 54. Because in his most recent video, Potholer's Last Word, he gives his final opinion on the drama between him and Amanakin. And yes, thank you for the drama. But it's a rather sad position that he now finds himself in, because, to be honest, it really doesn't count very much as drama. There was the DMCA storm, but basically Amanakin corrected herself. She removed the offending video, saying that Darwin's theory of evolution was based on racist ideals. And because she is no longer deliberately lying, then that disqualifies her from the Golden Crocoduck. And a lot of people who are on YouTube simply to see hate speech basically against Muslims have said that Potholer is giving in, and that this is somehow evidence that Islam is a tyranny. And so Potholer has now said, if it's going to end up like this, and if people can't just take it as a bit of a joke as it's intended, then he may suspend this year's Golden Crocoduck, and he may not do it ever again.
To be fair, I don't blame him. Everyone seems to be going a bit nuts over the fact that he did the right thing. He acted like a sort of stereotypical proper English gentleman over it, and I just think it's just all, get over yourself, guys, the ones that are saying that he's sold out, because he clearly hasn't.
No. And this isn't the first time that a Muslim has been in the Golden Crocoduck nominations. It's just the first time that it's been very apparent. And I think Coughlin made a video which I wholeheartedly agree with, basically saying that Potholer is a wonderful channel, that we've learned so much from him, and it would be an absolute shame to see this go. It doesn't help that Thunderfoot waded in on this, and we're going to get to Thunderfoot in just a minute, but he also accused Amanakin of censoring for Islam, as he put it. I just think she was just censoring because she wanted to control her channel, partly because she was a businesswoman, and partly because some people, when it all kicked off, were just being unfair and obnoxious. Yeah, I mean, I know I posted a comment sort of asking why did she false DMCA him, and it never, to my knowledge, it didn't get up on her channel page. But I wasn't rude to her, and it's the fact that people have been rude.
Yeah, she's never acknowledged that she did wrong. I mean, people pointed out what she did wrong. She says, like, no, I did what I did. It's like,
yeah, I mean, she's never been in the right in terms of legal status with this. But as Coughlin pointed out, that people generally don't DMCA because they're censoring for their religion, or at least when dozens of Christians like P.P. Simmons and Venom Fang X, and I don't think Nephilim Free ever filed a DMCA, did he? But whenever it's a Christian that's DMCA'd, they're just doing it because they're butthurt, and they don't want people to see their foolish mistakes. And the same, I think, is probably true with Amanakin. I think possibly she had other interests in that she was trying to protect the reputation of her business. But yeah, I don't think there was any reason to suspect that she was doing it to protect her faith. So I would also encourage anybody who hasn't yet been to Potholer's channel and send him some encouraging words. I mean, well, I don't know whether or not we should be saying that.
I think to remind him and point out that there's a decent bunch of people out on YouTube that like his videos because they are interesting and entertaining. Because he does have quite a way about how he puts down the people that are stupid, but he's putting down their ideas as opposed to them. Yeah.
And I mean, if people are looking for a holy war, I suppose you could call it, then they're more than welcome to click the unsubscribe button.
Yeah, I mean, I unsubscribed from last year, really, because I didn't like the way some of his videos were going. It had been bugging me. I didn't go, unsub, or make a big deal out of it. I just did it.
Yeah, so I would recommend, if you haven't already, then go and give Potholer some encouraging words, whichever position you think you should take, because I think he needs reminding just how many of his subscribers do appreciate the videos that he's done. I think he's probably the best skeptical channel that there is on YouTube. I don't think anybody can even come close to him when it comes to presenting the evidence to support their case, presenting references and so on. So
Yeah.
I would actually say there's a guy I think is a good second, and that's Live-Footed Man.
Yes, he's
I've
pretty
seen
good.
a few of his. I'm subscribed to him. I haven't seen many
I
of
think
his.
he is so way undersubscribed compared to how much effort he puts into his videos and his many parters going against like Ian Juby and creationism and so on. He's way more entertaining than Thunderfoot is, and he's also he's great. I sometimes I put all his videos in a playlist and I watch it so I can fall to sleep, not because he's boring, but I need stimulation to fall asleep. So it's just
my only slight problem with Lithoded Man is that he will take something like a 1.5 hour Kent Hovind seminar or something, and he will debunk every single point in it, which leads to about 20 or 30 videos.
I like
To be fair, that sort of level of bullshit needs that kind of level of debunking.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what my current little project is to go through a certain book by a certain creationist.
But you do actually have to sit down. You do actually have to set aside a couple of hours in order to watch this all the way through. It's not something you watch casually. But I do love Lithoded Man. He's great.
But what he did to begin with was that he made all these parters and just uploaded them like all at the same time. And I messaged him and said, it's probably better if you put like a couple of days between every part, because it just became like the vector of debunking creationism. When you looked at your subscription box, it just said Live-Footed Man. Like not YouTube, it's Live-Footed Tube.
Yeah. We did have one other thing to say on the whole YouTube front before moving on to our final little piece of news. I'm not sure who wants to say that. I think Bear might be the best one to say this one, because he's had the most kind of interest with this little bit of news. If Bear's still with us.
Yes, what little bit of news?
About a certain large headphoned YouTuber.
Ah, yes. It appears that Nephilim Free is back on YouTube.
Like Lazarus.
He has announced his new computer, and it sounds like he got a really good deal if he got it for really cheap. It's an AMD Phenom 2 3.4 gigahertz with 4 gigabytes DDR3 RAM, 300 gigabyte Western Digital hard drive with a backup 250 gigabyte Western Digital hard drive.
Reliable evidence firewall.
And a GeForce 8800 GT overclocked.
Someone's been paying some attention to his first video, because apparently there's a new video up as well.
Yeah, he's been back for a few days. We noticed comments here and there, but now, yes, he has actually made a video, so it is official.
Yes.
Well, I saw him first time I noticed he was online was he popped up on my Skype list. I was like, at first I thought it was Dark
A bad dream.
Dark Matter again, because he parodies Nephilim Free and renames his Skype name to Nephilim Free, and I'm like, oh, it's Dark Matter again. I clicked it, like, oh shit, it's the actual Nephilim Free.
It's about $100 computer he bought there, or someone bought for him.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can still
there's the video.
I've just been watching the chat thing, and I don't know how to get the name right. Lamuela has said, I have the weirdest boner. I'm not even going to ask what that comment means, given in mind that we're talking about Nev.
Did you see the video feed?
No, I can still see a picture of a mannequin, so I'm not going to crush that. I'm just going to click refresh and see what happens.
Yes, it was Neff's face posted on a supermodel's body.
Oh,
there it is again.
I do like. I'm just watching the Neff's "I'm Back" video, and it is pretty damn bizarre in that he's telling a tale about his old computer while dramatic music plays in the background. But I do like the fact he starts. There was a certain computer. It played 3D games. It browsed the internet, but unfortunately, he's misspelled the word "browsed." Makes it closer to bruised, which is which is nearer the mark, if you want my opinion.
Oh my god! Oh god, yeah, I can see the next picture. Oh yeah, it's not. Sorry, brain fart. There was my Skype beeped at me. Yes, the final little bit of news is it's actually relating to us. Now, I don't know whether or not any of you guys. Oh, it's exciting. Whether
Can't
you
wait to hear about it.
I know. Whether or not any of you guys were here with us when we did the original 12-hour call of much funness.
The Science Gangbang call. Look it up on YouTube.
Oh, wasn't it called the Journal Club from Hell originally, and then we kind of ended up acquiring Neff's term for it.
Yeah, Neff called it that during the call, so we said, why not?
Yeah, just go with the flow.
He's always been great for unfortunate phrases, hasn't he? Like his 10 blue balls.
Yes, thank you. We gangbanged him for 12 hours. But what we're actually planning to do, because it's coming up in December, and it's effectively going to be our birthday, because that's the first day it all happened, although it took us a little bit while to get more organised. And what we're thinking of doing is, in part, recreating it. We're going to have a 12-hour Skype blog TV session. We're sorting out our guests. We've got some guests that hopefully we can get on. We've got a big list. We've got to start contacting people. If you think you've got anyone that you'd like to recommend to us, you can drop Sound an email. And I think he's got an email address for the Skeptic TV thing, which we'll get up on the screen at some point or somewhere. We're going to try and organise a auction via eBay. Hopefully we're going to make it interesting, kind of go for a bit of a comic relief style-y sort of thing, and we're going to be using it as a fundraiser. So we're going to raise some money, not for ourselves, but for this year, what we're going to do is, there is in the States the Secular Students Alliance, I believe it is, the SSA, Student Alliance. And it's to do with sort of atheist and secular students in the United States, and giving them a kind of support thing to do with their university clubs. Lef is the one that knows more about this than I do, because he's head of
university and high schools.
Yeah, and it's I'm not sure exactly what they do. Do you know a bit more about them, Bear?
Yeah, they're an organization that helps people form and get their memberships up for secular and humanist college and high school groups. So if somebody wants to start like a humanist group at their high school, and their high school says no, then they can contact the SSA, and the SSA will go through the necessary steps and help them, if need be, to form this club. They also have a support network. They're branching out into an international rather than just an American establishment, and they're getting some prominent people. The SSA is also the people who book Richard Dawkins to speak in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, if you bear in mind as well, one of the things in the United States is that there is issues in some areas with people that are atheist or secular getting a bit of a rough time in terms of having to deal with prejudice against them. The fact that they don't believe.
We had them come to our school, my old high school, last year. There was the people that just stand outside the schools and hand out Bibles to the kids. One of the boys that rode one of the buses said, "No thanks, I'm an atheist." And the old guy grabbed his arm and told him to take it, and he said no. And so the old man went inside and told the principal that he was swearing at him and threatening him and stuff like that, even though the bus driver and the other kids on the bus said no, he was being polite and everything. And so, and someone called the SSA, and they made it so that they contacted the authorities and basically said that handing out Bibles right outside the school doors is pretty much the same thing as the school promoting a certain religion. So they made it so that they have to stand outside of school grounds to hand out the Bibles.
Yeah, so it's a sort of charity that will actually potentially have a really good impact and possibly make a difference with some people. So that's who we're going to support this year. We've got plans that the charities that we'll support with this, because we're trying to make it a bit of a birthday thing for us, and we've picked one for next year, which we will tell you all about later, because we're going to focus on the SSA this year. So if you've got any ideas or suggestions, get in touch with Sound and we'll take it on board and see what we can do with it. Now,
Yep. Can I just say a quick word about the eBay?
Yes, please say about the eBay.
Two things. First of all, the show is going to spread across 3 continents, maybe more. But we're currently looking. We know plenty of YouTubers in Europe and in North America who we're hoping to get on the show. Also, we're going to try and see if we can get some special guests on the show. Think of people like Dawkins or Eugenie Scott. But what we're struggling to think of is anybody who is a well-known YouTuber who lives in Australia or New Zealand who would be good to help us out on the show, or any special guests you can think of that would be willing to do that time slot for us as well. We could also have Asian guests, although at the moment I don't think that we've got anyone in mind for that. So we're looking for suggestions for that. The other thing is that we're going to be hosting, just like DPR Jones's fundraiser for Medicine Sans Frontières, we're going to have an eBay auction. And so we're looking for items that can be donated to that. Doesn't matter what it is. If you've got something lying around, just contact me and I'll tell you what you need to know about listing it. So just keep an eye out in the next few weeks to see if you've got anything that you can sell.
Sounds look at the video feed.
Yes, I'm enjoying it immensely. But if,
if you can give us some of those,
if you've got recommendations for hosts or something that you would like to sell on eBay, then just contact me either at sound@skeptictv.net or through my YouTube channel, or you can find me on Skype. I've got the same username, so whichever way you want.
Okay. So that's what we're planning in December. So we're going to be a little bit busy, a little bit hectic along the way, but it should be fun and interesting. So bear with us if we seem a little bit flustered between now and then. Just before we finish with the news, though, Yosh has got a little short snippet that he's going to share with us.
Even though he's not here today, I think you should all congratulate our very own Lafayette1991 because he's recently made a YouTube partner.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yay.
Busy with all the other stuff. We forgot that. He's a YouTube partner now. So.
Congratulations to him. He can share the money.
Yeah. He's going to share the money with us. So what are they all about? Are they scary things? Will they kill the world? Will zombies possible? We don't know, but Tilson is going to start something. He's going to chip in if he hasn't fallen asleep.
I haven't fallen asleep. I've been listening. Well, to start out with pandemics and to talk a little about what is the influence of religion and the effects of religion in regards of pandemics and the dangers of it. In early 2000, Christopher Hitchens was traveling around in India, where they still have polio. Polio is the second disease we are really close at wiping out. I think it's like 1 or 2% left. So it's the next smallpox. So in India, they were working really hard with UNICEF because the vaccine is really easy to hand out and it's not something that's intrusive. It's not an injection. All you have to do is give 2 drops to infants. 1 drop first, and then after 3 weeks, you give the second drop as a booster and to secure the immunization process.
And it's ingested, isn't it? They usually soak it into a sugar cube, and they
Those things on the tongue generally aren't pleasant.
And he writes in his book, God is Not Great, that he had some concerns about the Muslim in that area, that they might fight against it. So he writes in his book on page 45, in 2005, I learned one outcome. In northern Nigeria, a country that had previously checked in a provisional polio-free, a group of Islamic religious figures issued a ruling, or fatwa, that declared that polio vaccine to be a conspiracy by the United States and amazingly the United Nations against the Muslim faith. The drops were designed, said the mullahs, to sterilize the true believers. Their intention and effect was genocidal. Nobody was to swallow them or to administer them to infants. Within months, polio was back, and not just in northern Nigeria. Nigerian travelers and pilgrims had already taken it as far as Mecca and spread it back to several other polio-free countries, including free African ones and also faraway Yemen. The entire boulder would have to be rolled back right up to the top of the mountain. You may say that this is an isolated case, which would be a grimly apt way of putting it, but you would be mistaken. Would you care to see my video of the advice given by Cardinal Alfonso Lopez de Tréjeuillet, the Vatican president of the Pontifical Council for the Family, carefully warning his audience that all condoms are secretly made with nasty microscopical holes through which AIDS virus can pass? So basically, religion is fighting against public health and is a great danger to cause pandemics, basically. So that's my take and Hitchin's take on it.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that sort of thing, that any religious leader that's promoting that kind of no, don't get vaccinated or don't use this protective measure needs a big fat slap in the face with a granite fish, because it's only going to lead to more death.
Yeah, and I mean, there's this whole thing about certain people say I can afford not to have my child vaccinated, etc., because of herd immunity. Well, the way I see it, if every child that could get vaccinated were vaccinated, not only would there be not only would they be able to survive by herd immunity, but there is a greater likelihood of that disease becoming extinct in the same way as smallpox did. It's the only way that these diseases subsist is by infecting those who are still susceptible.
Yeah, I mean, the whole kind of sort of thing is that, like I say, the herd immunity is most people are immune, so it's not going to get to people. But I mean, the differences between like epidemic and pandemic is that an epidemic is just going to be in one nation. A pandemic, you are looking at something that is spreading around the globe, and for that for vaccinations to work, you really want at least herd immunity on a global scale to try and get to a position where you can then start looking at how you get rid of the virus for good.
And especially, go on, Tilson.
Herd immunity is also not, is actually vulnerable, because if only a few parents, let's say 1,000 or so, in a community thought that, oh, we live in a city with like, let's say 50 or 100,000 people, we can not let our kids get vaccinated because, herd immunity and all that. Well, that really lowers the herd immunity significantly. And you can see in America with the anti-vaxxer group that because of this, you have a big group, which is still a minority. You can see a lot of things are popping up again, that like whooping cough and so on, stuff that we previously thought that it was not a problem in our parts of the world, in Europe and in Northern America.
Well, the thing I can interject is with the UK and TB, tuberculosis. With the BCG vaccination, we'd done a pretty good solid job of not necessarily completely eradicating it in the country, but making it very rare. I mean, I know certainly when I went to school, the BCG was standard, and it was up until recently. I mean, Sam's a little bit younger than me. Did you have the BCG?
I had the BCG, and I've got the scar to prove it.
Yeah, my BCG didn't have the scar because I didn't have the one needle. It was a big stamp. But so the UK has pretty much mostly got this thing licked. I don't know whether or not they're still doing school immunities, but because of incoming population and people travelling around the place, we're actually getting TB back.
Yeah, and it is starting to horrify me that there are people of my age that are starting to die again from things like mumps and rubella and TB, and yet people 10 years older don't have this problem.
No, the whole MMR thing. I mean, I was a kid when MMR first came out even, and it was one of the first things my mum did was take me and my brother down to the doctors and get us jabbed with it.
Yeah, and you touched on something that I was going to mention, Womble, which is basically that because we are an increasingly mobile species, the likelihood of something going from being an epidemic to a pandemic is all the greater, simply because it only takes one infected person to come from a country where that disease is prevalent, and they can infect a whole new country from it. So we can't assume just because a certain disease only seems to happen in some other corner of the world that it's never going to affect us.
Well, I know, but I'm not sure whether or not they still do the BCG BCG inoculations in school. I know Gleamy just said that they still have it happening with people that are currently about 18. So I don't know whether or not it's just been stopped or whatever. I would say keep using a vaccination up until the point that we know the disease is no longer prevalent worldwide. But I'm not in charge of these things.
I think still we vaccinate at primary school in Denmark. I know tuberculosis is popping up again in Denmark as well. I think it is also important for people that do travel abroad to get vaccinated before they travel out. I don't know how many people actually do what the doctors recommend of getting these inoculations before they travel to Asia or Africa, for example, or South America, where they have other more exotic diseases that we don't have in Europe and North America, which the herd is not immune to, and you quickly spread it around if it gets into our herd.
Yeah. And I mean, well, this something I'd definitely like to talk about later in the show are the two most recent these potential pandemics that have been on the news are the swine flu and bird flu problems. And one of the things that I want to get off my chest right now is it's irritated me the number of people who were objecting to the development of a vaccine and the stockpiling of Tamiflu medication to help people who are infected. And of course, now that the disease has turned out to be a lot less virulent than we thought, the people who made those decisions are being condemned as foolish or scaremongering.
What, for trying to make sure that just in case it kicked off and it was really horrid, that we had our bases covered?
Yeah, because the early signs suggested
Ignorant.
the early signs suggested that it could be a major problem.
I would also say that the flu is probably the one virus that we probably should fear the most, because it's probably the virus that is killed most people.
Was it there was the Spanish flu in 1918 or something, wasn't it? 1918 we've had from Tech Guy. I don't know whether or not he came out over the audio. No, he didn't. He's just told me.
But I believe
you're distracting me now, Tech Guy.
Am I right in saying that killed more people than both world wars?
Yeah.
I can't remember the numbers, but no, it killed
it's in the millions, like the gigantic millions of how many people died of it. And the problem with the flu is that there are so many strains of it, and it evolves so fast that it's hard to actually get a vaccine. We don't even have a cure for it. We only have like...
The best we have is annual vaccinations for common versions. If you get a really exotic flavour of it, you are going to be screwed, no matter how many times you get vaccinated against the flu.
All you can do is deal with the symptoms.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like
and hope
basically
that the rest
get
of you
the
is
body
healthy.
to a place where it's not fighting the symptoms but the virus, and hopefully the immune system could kill it off.
And of course...
Yeah.
Oh, no, go on.
Well, the flu, it's like, I think if you get one of the more extreme ones, there's like a 10% chance that you would survive. And the fact that also what makes it so nasty is because it takes a while before it actually shows up in the body. Like, you could have the flu and it only shows up after 3 weeks. It's not like Ebola, which is really deadly, that shows up within 24 hours or so and kills you within less than a week. That doesn't spread very fast because it kills the host so fast, whilst the flu can stay in a body and infect a lot of people before the community actually can see, oh shit, we have a pandemic going on right now.
Yeah, and of course it's virtually impossible to prevent the spread from person to person, simply because it's airborne and unless you shut them in a sealed room.
Yeah, because one of the things as well is we actually have a kind of evolutionary response. You know, if you ever see someone that is looking poorly, you get the kind of cringe and pull away from the response. And it's partly down to the fact that it's our body, psychologically acting on the fact that you can see signs that someone's unwell, and there's the possibility that you could get the illness yourself. It's an instinctive behaviour.
Yeah, I should say we forgot to say at the start of the show that if you have any questions for us, or if you'd like to put something to the panel, you can contact us. Just add SkepticTV to your Skype requests and we'll invite you into the call. We forgot to say that at the start of the show.
Yes, we did. But I did say that on my video about how you guys didn't turn up last time. You abandoned me.
I had work.
We're going
Yeah, but
to
it's no
see,
excuse for
actually.
the best.
We're going to see if we can get the Kitch to join us, because he's probably more knowledgeable about these things. He's done a lot more work in microbiology than any of us have. So we'll see if we can get him into the call to share his expertise.
It is really annoying that that it's not helping that all these people are avoiding vaccines because they think it causes autism.
Just,
I mean, we can
And
quite
they-
easily devote a whole program to vaccines, but I don't see why.
yeah,
Well,
and
well,
Ryan
the
has
whole-
no link to that.
Hello. Well, the whole the reason
Hello,
the whole
welcome
thing
to us, Kitch.
the reason the whole thing started was about the time the children are getting their vaccines is about the same time as the signs of autism start showing up, and so people who
Yeah, but
automatically say
autism's
one thing happens at the same
genetics.
time as the other. Huh?
It's your autism's how start again. How the brain works. It's because there's something different about. I'm just saying for other people. There's something different about the structure of the brain, or however it works. But it's an impaired development of certain areas of the brain, which causes the various flavors of autism that you get, from the sort of mild Asperger's type to the full-on Rain Man type.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've
just
had this
unfortunate-
discussion. So I've had this discussion with my parents on a number of occasions. It astonishes me that my parents still refuse to accept that there is no link between MMR and autism. I mean, they quite rightly point to the fact that a lot of studies of things like drug efficacy are fiddled by the manufacturers. And she points out that it would be more than likely that the government would try and silence objections to the MMR vaccine because they're in the pocket of big pharma. But it doesn't. But the fact of the matter is that there is no study on any kind of large scale. The only one I think that shows any kind of link is the one by Wakefield, which I think, as we all know, was appallingly conducted.
Yeah, he used was it less than a dozen babies or something?
10 of his son's
individuals.
friends. Yeah.
And
I also say one thing.
it was a badly. I was going to say it was a sort of
and he
badly
took
done, badly constructed study.
And he
then the
took blood
press had
samples
press had
without
a
the
field
parents'
day.
permission.
Yeah, so it was badly done science.
But yeah,
I would
so
say
I mean,
one thing about Wakefield is I think his intention backfired on him, because what I could understand from the case was the fact that it was one ingredient he wanted to have removed, because he was promoting and had money in another kind of vaccine that didn't have that ingredient. So he hoped for people to use the other vaccine instead, but it backfired completely, and now no one wants to get a vaccine, those who believe in the Wakefield thing.
yeah, well, I mean,
I think there's a lot of Sorry.
I was aware that in that case it was Wakefield had I could be wrong. He had investment in separating the MMR vaccine into 3 different ones for measles and mumps and rubella. It wasn't
That's
one.
the way it had been beforehand, because I think I can remember having being a little bit older than the rest of the kind of British lot. I can remember having separate jabs to cover these things. I mean, I know I've still got my original inoculation card kicking about somewhere. So they were originally separate, and I think it was just put together to try and make it easier in terms of the number of jabs that you had, or just try and make it more effective. I'm not sure. Kitch probably knows more.
I mean, I'm not sure whether or not this was the ingredient that Wakefield was opposed to, but one of the ones which was frequently pointed to was the vaccine preservative thimerosal, which is a mercury-based compound. That's why Collins very helpfully put up that image of a syringe full of mercury. And people have pointed to this and said that mercury is terribly bad for you. There's also another aluminium-based one, and aluminium is also not particularly good for brain function. And they say this is terrible, this shouldn't be in children's vaccines. And the government turned around and said, no, it never has been. So if people were looking for a link with thimerosal, then they're barking up the wrong tree.
But by the way, that thing with mercury reminds me of something with alternative treatment groups. There's a group on Facebook in Danish that's called We Who Believe That Alternative Treatment Should Be a Part of Our NHS in Denmark. And the funny thing is that they go against a vaccine as well and say it contain mercury and all that. And then on the other hand, they promote sort of homeopathic remedies containing silver. And one of the fun things I saw
Is that
was
colloidal silver?
Exactly.
Oh God.
And it was actually kind
Sorry.
of sad and fun. It was the two things I noticed that really scared me. One of the things I talked with a doctor from the Kingdom Hospital in Denmark, who's a part of the Atheist Society in Denmark, which I'm also a member of. I showed him that. He's banned from that group because he gave sound medical advice. But
Did he?
this colloidal
Sorry.
silver thing, sometimes it's not completely homeopathic. It actually has silver in it, or mercury, which is called quicksilver as well, Denmark. And then you had a group of people, exactly, you get that thing, agria, something called, we get a blue tint in your skin. And a lot of the questions also resulted in people having heavy metal poisoning. And then people said you should drink more colloidal silver. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, Christ.
It's like the days where they used to use lead compounds in makeup. It made your skin look horrible and wrinkly because you were dying of lead poisoning. So they said, quick, put more on.
And then another question popped up on my
Ionized
birthday in this
water.
group that really pissed me off. It was a person who wrote in that they knew someone who had an MRSA infection, which is a medicine-resistant staphylococcus.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's multi-resistant
It's
staphylococcus.
basically
it's
a multi-resistant bacteria infection.
Okay, fine.
that
I know
is-
it's multiple resistant. Sorry.
which is potentially lethal. And all these people suggested like reflexology, chiropractic, colloidal silver to treat this. And I just wrote, you fucking nuts. This person needs to get into a aggressive treatment of antibiotics at the hospital. And someone accused me of lying, said that, oh no, this is what the medical industry wants. But thankfully, some of these actual people who had these clinics of alternative treatment said, we can't actually treat these people because it's against the law. They can't treat severe illnesses. They're not allowed to do that, especially illnesses like MRSA, which is contagious. I think that's good because it was crazy. And I showed that to that doctor friend of mine. He was like, that's completely bollocks and crazy, and they should be persecuted, the people who suggest these things, because it's potentially killing someone.
I know. That's the bit that really annoys me about some of the alternative therapies. It's not when it's kind of like the placebo sort of thing. Is you got to you want to have something to try and help you with headaches, and you want to go all natural and not have paracetamol and stuff. Which is fine if people want to deal with headaches without going to painkillers. No problem with that. Placebo effect can work quite well with sort of standard generic headaches.
Yeah. It's
But
when they
not
try
when
and
it's-
sell malaria tablets
Oh.
that are homeopathic or cancer treatments.
But yeah, as you can see, Gather, we're not fans of that.
No.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, in a fire.
But one of my main concerns with it is the fact that they don't have any not reliability, but culpability if it goes wrong, basically. And I've had discussion with many people. In Denmark, religion is much of a non-issue, but alternative treatment and New Age crap is one of those things that people hold to religiously, and you can see acupuncture. In my area alone, within a kilometer, there are 12 clinics, even one that drives out to you if you want acupuncture and reflexology all in one, even though it's contradictory to the mysticism that they invoke, that you can't use both of them because it contradicts how they're supposed to work. And many of the friends I have who support this, like, things say, well, it's placebo. If it works for people, it works. But, like, yes, my main problem is that these treaters don't say it's placebo. And then it opens up for people to believe that it can do even more.
But
if these treaters just said, well, it's placebo, basically, and you could actively do nothing and take a sugar pill, and that could work as well.
Yeah, I mean the danger how the things like the placebo and the alternative treatment can go in with pandemics, if we're sort of dragging ourselves back onto topic a little bit, will be that it's things like if the SARS scare and the swine flu scare is some of these quack sellers, particularly the ones that know that their treatments are quack treatments, will start using it as a way of ripping off sort of unsuspecting members of the public, and potentially people will take this stuff, make take this stuff thinking that they're doing something to protect themselves, ignoring the government and warnings about, you might want to be careful about going to these sorts of places or doing these sorts of things because of the risk of infection, and then they're just working to spread the infection even more.
I think also one of the main problems you could have with alternative treatments and in cases with pandemics is that if you live in a country where you have to pay for the medicine, like let's say in America or other places where their HNS do not actually cover medical expenses, these alternative treaters could go in with their sort of treatments and cheaper, and basically do what originated acupuncture. Basically, it's the peasants' desperate attempt to actually get better, because actual medicine costs more than putting needles in someone.
Yeah, it's always interesting.
Have we got someone who wants to join the call? I think our tech guy is lining somebody up. Wait just a second while they're added in. But no, I've come around to this point now. I used to get annoyed with the alternative treatment simply because it was ripping people off. But since James Randi basically said these words, and I've agreed with him ever since, that he says he doesn't care about individual people being ripped off because it's their own free choice that they go into these sorts of things. It's simply the fact that it is creating this culture which thinks that homeopathic medicine can be used to treat things like cancer, and so people are dying unnecessarily. And it also takes a lot of the trust away from reliable, provable medicine, and that's basically that way lies destruction.
Yeah.
Yes, can we... Oh, sorry, Womble.
I was going to say, I was going to comment on that, but I was going to type into the chat to Colin that, yes, let's get our caller in.
Yes, I was going to say, can we have our caller in, please? This is the Birmingham Optimist.
We're calling him. And I was trying to read what he wanted to talk to us about.
And if this is Warrior Christian doing a Brummie accent again, we're not going to be pleased.
I would imagine not.
I was going to say, unless he's made a completely new Skype account.
I think he does, though. I think he makes about 5 a week.
I don't know. We're going off topic here.
Sorry, yes.
Do you want to quickly outline what your question is for us and your sort of stand?
No, it wasn't really a question. It was more from. I have a quote here from Bertrand Russell, which says, "Diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. And this includes vaccines. This is part of the New World Order's plan to make us all docile, and all you people, you are helping all the sheep stay blind by..."
So, are you saying that we're somehow contributing to the development of the New World Order by suggesting that if you go and get yourself vaccinated against nasty diseases X, Y, and Z to keep yourself safe, that's a bad thing?
Well, can I just ask Birmingham Optimist, are you actually a proponent of this philosophy, or are you just asking for our take on it?
Yes, I'm a proponent of it.
Right, okay.
Okay. I mean, I can understand the sort of desire to want to try and make sure that we're not turning ourselves into some sort of flock population. But at the same time, I don't particularly want to see kids getting poorly and dying of preventable diseases.
Well, there are alternative remedies. I forget his name, but there's a great guy from Australia who's anti-vaccine, and he has all sorts of natural remedies for...
Okay. How does a natural remedy work to prevent your immune system being destroyed by AIDS, for example? Or so one of the more sort of treatable illnesses, tetanus. I'm not sure exactly how that infection works. Sorry?
AIDS that was a man-made, manufactured.
Right. You've got some evidence for that?
It's too complex.
It's not. It's if you're going to say that's too complex, you might as well say we're too complex and we've had an intelligent designer work on us.
I would argue that its complexity is probably an indication that it wasn't created by man, simply because we're still fumbling in the dark with regards to genome synthesis and so on. Now, it could be that there is an underground organization that is light years ahead of the society as we know it, but I imagine that there's no evidence for that.
Guys,
just to add one more thing, the first tech really synthesized genome occurred last year. Everyone knows. I hope Craig J. Ventnor's discovery of the first synthetic cell. That was only last year, and that was announced in a heartbeat. And he was working that for 10 years. AIDS would require to create something like AIDS, just purely as from my biotechnology this perspective, would be something would be miles ahead of us, hugely miles ahead of us, and that can evolve the way AIDS does. It would be such an achievement of mind-bending proportions. I hope I'm not over. I hope I'm not being too dramatic there.
No, I know, I understand completely. It's a bit like going up to a geologist and asking them what the geological column's made of, which we all know we've experienced that. I can understand the thing of questioning to make sure that we're not kind of being a sheep-like population, but I think to turn around and say that it is turning into, is some sort of work of the New World Order is actually quite bonkers, personally, if you ask me for my opinion.
Well,
not to be rude, but...
Go ahead, Birmingham.
This is just typical. They make it an embarrassment to be skeptical of these things, like the BBC lately. They put up a thing called, 9/11 Truther Road Trip, and they try and make you ashamed, like you're an idiot if you think.
Did I say that there's anything wrong with just a bit of questioning? To make sure that we're not becoming this sort of sheep type thing. No, that's not what I said at all. I said I can understand the point of view of wanting to question so that we're not becoming any sort of kind of flock populace, as it were. But I do generally think, given the fact that I know a little bit about how the body works and how viruses and that work in Kitch, and the other guys that are more the biologists in the group know a lot more than me. We're turning around and saying, actually, we've got some expert knowledge and we think this is a good thing. We're not paid by the government.
I want to chime in one thing as well. One thing people say with the New World Order, they're afraid that people turn into sheep. There's two things I find it's kind of funny with that, because one of the things is the people who are afraid of the New World Order tends to be Christians who believe it's the Antichrist who's going to raise up and be the leader of this. And they talk about themselves as if they were the sheep and Jesus the shepherd. And the second thing is that is why we need to promote free thinking and skepticism, so you just don't become a sheep, so you actually can evaluate reality and the evidence and make up your own mind. That is what we're out to do with SkepticTV. It's not say that, hey, everyone, follow us, think exactly as we do, have the same life philosophy as we do. No, think skeptically. And I think if there was such a thing as a New World Order rising up, the skeptics, the free thinkers, would be the one fighting against it. As you also saw in the Second World War, the free thinkers were some of the first groups as well that Hitler tried to get rid of.
I announced this on the last show, but it wasn't until about 4 or 5 weeks ago that I still had my doubts about whether or not man went to the moon in 1969. And admittedly, people scoffed at me for
the first time they went, or just went at all.
Yeah, the first time.
Okay.
I perhaps did get scoffed at a little bit for saying that I had my doubts. I didn't buy into any of the conspiracy evidence like forged photographs and things like that. It was simply a political thing. I could imagine that the US might want to fake the lunar landings given the situation that they were in terms of the Cold War.
Yeah, fake it and then go later.
And it wasn't until I finally came up with my own standards of satisfactory evidence that we went there that I accepted this. And I think it's the same sort of situation I mean, New World Order is a bit of a tough one, simply because a good conspiracy theory, and I'm not outright saying that New World Order doesn't exist, but a lot of conspiracies, if evidence is presented to the contrary, it's automatically assumed that the person presenting that evidence is on their side or in on the job. But I think when it comes to things like the efficacy of vaccines and the alternative medicines and things like that, the reason why we who take the orthodox view feel like we can afford to scoff at the position is not an issue of brainwashing. It's simply the fact that we have the scientific evidence, and this is all stuff which is independently verifiable. So anybody, whoever they are, can try and replicate that experiment and see if they get the same result. Now, of course, not a lot of people do that, and I do often unquestioningly accept these things because I know that there are checks and balances already in place that have been fulfilled. But if I wanted to, I could try and do my own vaccine trials, or I could try and put homeopathy on test myself. And I would, hopefully, if I conducted the experiment properly, I would come up with the same result as the orthodox view.
Yeah. Let me hop in
We
here.
were waiting on you, Bear.
Yeah, see, with quotes like what he presented for Bertrand Russell, most of the time somebody takes it and just uses it for a point, someone else finds it, takes it, and it gets to a point where that's all the quote is. It's just that little quote. And unfortunately, that's how quote mines actually get around. This is another quote mine. Bertrand Russell isn't trying to say that injections are part of the New World Order. I actually looked up the original book. You can find it on Google Books. And I'm going to read quite a bit of this because he explains exactly what he's saying here instead of in that little quote. He doesn't believe that injections, government-mandated injections, are part of a New World Order. So here's what he's actually saying from The Impact of Science and Society by Bertrand Russell. This is on page 61. Scientific societies are as yet in their infancy. It may be worthwhile to spend a few moments in speculating as to possible future developments of those that are oligarchies. It is to be expected that advances in physiology and psychology will give governments much more control over individual mentality than they now have even in totalitarian countries. I cannot speak today. Fichte laid it down that education should aim at destroying free will so that after pupils have left school, they shall be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. But in his day, this was an unattainable ideal. What he regarded as the best system in existence produced Karl Marx. In future, such failures are not likely to occur where there is a dictatorship. Diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Even if all are miserable, all will believe themselves happy because the government will tell them that they are so. And I'll skip a bit because he talks about what the Nazis did. And he then sums it up. Such possibilities on any large scale may seem a fantastic nightmare, but I firmly believe that if the Nazis had won the last war, and if in the end they acquired world supremacy, they would, before long, have established just such a system as I have been suggesting. And he also continues, to prevent these scientific horrors, democracy is necessary but not sufficient. There must also be that kind of respect for the individual that inspired the doctrine of the rights of man. As an absolute theory, the doctrine cannot be accepted. So he's saying that just because governments are mandating things doesn't mean it's always wrong. It's just one step that could lead to something. And he explains how in the past we've gotten this, but also you have to be aware of it and then realize that democracy, not what the government does, is what keeps government in check. So that is a complete quote mine. He's not saying that injections are part of a new world order. He's saying that's a method that governments can use for it. And the best way to fight against it is to be aware and to vote or get active with your government. become a representative, rights, work for one, whatever you need to do. I mean, he lists out quite a few things, but he isn't saying injections are bad.
Well, not specifically injections, but he was talking about the mind control using. Obviously, he might not have known injections would be used at the time. But
how could you use an injection for mind control?
Well, I don't know, but it happens. I
mean, I could suggest that it's possible to write a space on a pink balloon, but it's not really possible.
No,
it's not. I'm not trying to ridicule you, but it's just.
Yes, it is. People have had their children injected and noticed a difference. And we also, I don't know how it works exactly, but it also happens with chemtrails.
Correlation does not equal
exactly.
causation.
There's no such thing as chemtrails.
Oh, also, to the reaction thing to an injection, I had, when I was about 13, 14, I had my tetanus booster, and I was poorly for a couple of days afterwards, as my body was dealing with the kind of the weakened, deadened virus bits that had been injected into it. Is that a reason to say that the tetanus virus is bad? No, not virus, vaccination. It's there to help protect me, so that if my body ever meets the real virus, it's going to be protected.
And I just wanted to come on to the noticing that was said about noticing change in their children as well. Around the time these shots are giving, the children are going through, they're developing, they're maturing, they're changing psychologically. They're going from babies to toddlers to young children and so on, and they're also around the times that and also this is around the times that neural behavioral disorders will start to make them, will become apparent, such as autism.
Yeah, it's like I was saying earlier, the vaccines are given around the same time that the signs of autism start to show.
Yeah, exactly. I was meaning to acknowledge that Yoshimo said that. I just couldn't remember who it was.
So no problem.
Yeah. That's just my little spiel.
You're quite right. Correlation does not equate to causation.
Because when they give the vaccines to older children, they don't develop autism like the younger kids supposedly do.
Yeah.
But also they did a study on some countries that had the certain vaccines that they thought caused autism with countries that did not give them, and the autism rates were about equal. So
I mean, I have a certain.
Causing it.
I mean, I have a certain amount of cynicism for that kind of study, simply because you could, for instance, compare an African country with the UK or something, and they don't have the MMR vaccine, but they don't have autism either, largely because such a thing is not a concern.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the better examples are countries. I think there was a study in Sweden and possibly Norway, but they take a whole load of kids who grew up in the years just before the MMR vaccine was introduced, and then a whole load after. Was it Denmark? Okay. And in doing that, because there's only a few years separation, you're comparing like with like, and you make sure that everything's stratified by class and gender and all the rest of it. The only thing, hopefully, that is different is the use or not use of MMR, and they find no significant difference. So it's not even a correlation, let alone causation.
So we'd like to thank you for coming in with your question, or your sort of discussion point. We're going to have to say goodbye to you now, but thank you for calling in. And even if you do have a contrary opinion to the ones that held by the panel, we do like to hear from people. Those that think the same as us, and those that have contradictory opinions. We will try and be polite and respectful. That hopefully you found with us.
And I would like to say there's somebody in chat. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to step in. Whoever's been praying in the Austin, Texas area for rain, thank you. It's currently downpouring so bad that I can barely see the road about half a mile away that I usually can see from my window.
And it only took half a year.
I'm sorry, we just had so much rain in Denmark. I shouted to the sky, like, fuck off to Texas! They need it.
So whoever prayed today, thank you. Keep it up.
Yeah, I think Sam's got a quick closing thing with our caller.
No. Something about another caller. So,
Okay.
Birmingham, if you said you'd like to say something quickly before you go.
Thanks very much for having me on the show. I must thank you for the full Bertrand Russell quote, putting it into more of a contextual meaning. I'll have to stop handing out these pamphlets I've been handing out lately, because I've been handing these pamphlets out with that quote on to
That's
people.
usually what I do. When someone gives me a quote, I go back and look at the full source from the original source.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that you've done wrong by using that quote, but if someone's misquoted it to you and it slipped through, it's helpful to get these things in full context. But thank you.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I don't know if we have any more callers lined up, but if you do have something...
I was going to say that there is somebody, I don't know whether or not he's already lined up. Oh, he is lined up in Skype, so we can bring him in. He's been mouthing off in chat a little, saying it's unfair that we have so many panelists for only one lone caller. And I think DPR Jones, I think it was asked him to grow a pair and call in. So
yeah, let's get him on.
Hopefully, we've been getting in. For those of you
is DPR
looking
in
chat, he is in chat.
Yes, that's why all the little girls and boys have run away.
That's why I was so excited. I had to go in and lock the doors of my son's bedroom.
So for those watching in chat, this is for Jesus Christ, who's calling in. Hello, Jesus.
Hello. Hello. Right. So someone in the chat said I should call in, so I sent this request. Just to clarify, I never said anything about unfair and the poor caller. What I said is a panel of 6 or 7 people, and God knows how many people are in this call. 2, 4, 5, 7, 9 people. A panel of some 8 or 9 people with one caller.
Bearing in mind, one of those people is...
I will say that too.
Hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I said, basically, what I'm saying is a panel with several people, as many as you actually have here, with one caller, is not conducive to form any sort of interesting discussion or debate with your caller. Basically, what I really see is glorification of the hosts of the show with one caller that calls in with a question and gets 6 or 7 glorious responses and then says nothing thereafter.
Oh, we invited our last caller. Hang on, I'm just going to interrupt there. We invited our last caller in, and we were careful in making sure that we gave our caller a chance to speak and make sure that what they were saying was accurately reported. And also, 2 of these accounts are actually by the same person, because our tech guy, so that if ever needed to, he can join in the call. He has his own Skype logged in, and he also manages the group Skype to broadcast the show. So he generally doesn't always say much. So when you're saying about the number of people in this call, you're ignoring our technical setup.
Okay, how many people are actually panelists? How many people are actually panelists that are answering questions?
Regular panelists today that you've got me, Sound, Bear, and Yosh. We have Kitch in as an expert. Arj is our moderator, and he doesn't always say much.
We're already up to 5 then, if I've counted correctly.
But we don't always get a lot of callers, so we kind of need a
extraordinary amounts of people for the callers.
I mean, if anyone has any suggestions on how we can make the show interesting, we're always welcome to hear them. We've got no problem with hearing feedback from people.
Well, I'm just comparing your show to the Atheist Experience or the Magic Sandwich,
but we're different. We work in a different way. We have the pub banter style, which needs several people.
Okay. I know Womble's supposed to be presenting this, but I feel like I have to moderate now. Go ahead, for Jesus.
Well, basically, that's all I really wanted to say. And as I said, I didn't really think it's something that merited calling in for, but someone said I should call in and grow some balls, so...
Yeah.
Well, I certainly do have enough balls to call in, which is why I have.
Oh, well, thank you for doing it.
Well, I want to say one thing. It's not like it's a surprise of who's on tonight. We always introduce who's on at the beginning of the show. I'm just a guest panelist that sometimes I'm on as well. And people that join in, if you saw the previous callers, we were 1 or 2 people talking mostly with him. It's not like with 3 people banging in at the same time. We basically see who got the knowledge or a point on this particular argument that this person has presented.
We don't treat the average callers like we treat Nephilim.
No, I mean...
Anyway.
Well, fair enough. Just one last little tip about your previous caller. Say the word troll, Poe, or whichever you like. Sorry, guys, you got caught out there. I won't say who caught you out, but you guys got...
shame. Oh, no. I won't be able to continue with my life. I think I'm going to have to ask you to go so we can get back on with our topic. Thank you for calling
Anyhow,
in.
take care.
There's our second Poe in a row.
Oh, well. These things happen. It entertains the audience, and that's what we do it for.
It means we're
we should have let him go. So hang on a minute. So, forgive me if I'm being dense, but...
You are dense, yes, go on.
So those 2 callers were the same person?
Yes, sound of silence just cannot float.
So, pandemics. Sound, you were going to mention a couple of more recent pandemics earlier. Let's get our show back, kicking and screaming, on topic.
I've already been over swine flu and bird flu, which were the 2 that I really wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was sort of remembering back when I was doing my degree, way back when, in the depth of time when I was still an undergraduate. I had to go to Jersey on a field trip, and it was in the middle of the foot and mouth epidemic. And then we had to sort of make sure our boots and our shoes had been through these specialised mats and the like to try and prevent the spread of the disease. And I know the government was ordering mass culls of sheep and the like to try and prevent the spread of the disease. Is foot and mouth something that can pass to humans? I can't remember.
Yes, it can, and it's a very rare occurrence that it does. But there are cases of it. I did also... BSE was the other one I wanted to talk about, but no, stick to foot and mouth just for the time being. There were cases of people here in the UK who got foot and mouth, and I believe there were people who died from it.
Can someone explain to me what foot and mouth disease is?
Oh, God, I
can't remember exactly what it is.
Wasn't
the
hoof and
disease
mouth
that animals get.
It's a disease that affects primarily cattle.
That's scrapie and BSE and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.
Oh, it's mad cow disease.
No, mad cow and foot and mouth are different.
Okay, well, if it develops the Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome, then
that's a spongy brain thing.
Yeah. So that's what it does.
No, foot and mouth doesn't. It's a
okay,
disease.
mad cow disease is the one that develops
the spongy brain. Yeah. Or there's also
BSE is bovine spongiform encephalopathy.
Yeah.
So
I love that one.
Yes. But I know there's a big sort of ticking time bomb in the British population in the fact that we don't know how many people have been exposed to the prions that will cause new variant CJD. They certainly have had a few cases kicking in. One of the interesting things I remember from the time was the sort of comment that was floating around was that actually the British government were the only one that was openly admitting why they were culling loads of cattle. And that was the potential of a few other nations had a similar problem, but we were just the only one being open about it.
Well, I remember that during the...
Yes, Colin, that is a genuine symptom of foot in mouth.
Well, I remember when when the epidemic in the UK caught out with the mad cow disease. I remember in Denmark we were like, oh my God, we can't eat British meat anymore, and England was sort of isolated from exporting any of their beef to the mainland of Europe, which I think is a good defense against pandemics.
Being on an island is brilliant. Sorry.
Yeah, it's brilliant for the rest of us. We can isolate you every time you give us poor beef.
Hey, no pulling a 28 days later on us.
Can I just quickly bring some nerdy statistics to the table? In the UK, the last confirmed case of foot and mouth disease infecting a human being was back in 1966, although presumably the most recent outbreak didn't have any human transmission at all, but it can happen. And as for BSE, I believe there were cases of people contracting it. The human form is CJD. But I mean, it's also, the whole BSE thing in particular was just shocking from beginning to end, partially because the cause of it being the fact that cows are basically being fed cows.
No. More importantly, cows are being fed cow brains because you could
cow
mash
brain
up.
and spinal cord.
It's the brain and the spinal cord, the central nervous system.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happens if humans eat human neural tissue. We get some prions that will mess up our brain.
Yeah, and the prions can cross species as well. Some of them.
Yeah, but we've also, in the case of, certainly in the case of foot and mouth, and I'm pretty sure also in the case of BSE, it highlighted some rather disturbing findings, which were that partly the spread was being driven by the fact that farmers were shipping cows all around the country to different farms, so that when the DEFRA inspector, for those of you who don't know, DEFRA is the Department for the Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs. Whenever they turned up to survey a farm to see how many cows the farmer had to work out how much government subsidy he had, you basically shipping a load of cows from his neighbour so he could fiddle more government subsidy, and that was what helped the disease spread. I'm not saying that all farmers do that.
So basically, he used the Catholic tactics of shipping around.
Something like that, I don't know.
But it's basically shocking to discover that this was why it was spreading as quickly as it was.
Aren't the cases of VCJD expected to rise over the next couple of years?
I think they are, because it's the problem is it's a silent, well, not silent killer, but it's stealth for a while. It can sit around in you, and you've got a ticking time bomb as to whether or not you eventually do develop new variant CJD. I mean, I know at the time, I was a kid, so I have no idea sort of what quality of the sorts of meat that was coming in through Tesco's and Sainsbury's and that when I was a kid. But it's all likelihood that I've got a ticking time bomb case of it, because I was eating the beef at the time that all this scare stuff came out, and I'm not sure what the youngest sort of age is that's going to be safe from this. But there is a large portion of the British population that's alive now that was eating meat at that time, eating the beef.
Can anybody explain to me, because this is something which I've never understood about BSE and CJD in terms of its transmission. I know that it's caused by a misfolded protein called a prion, which is the only protein capable of replicating itself. But I've never understood how it is supposed to infect one person and another, and then another. Why this protein isn't digested, how it manages to get into the blood, or how it manages to get into the brain, or whatever. I don't know if anybody here knows.
I would imagine that it's one of the things that's but it survives the digestive process, because don't forget that the human stomach has acid that's at pH 1. Now, those of you that haven't been to a school science lesson for a long period of time might not know what pH 1 is. The pH scale, 7 is neutral, 14 is extremely alkali, 1 is extremely acid. And in the human stomach, we've got acid at pH 1. Sorry?
You said extremely alkaline, you mean extremely basic.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Alkaline and basic. It's taught as alkaline in schools.
I would just say, though, people get very hung up on this thing about stomach acid. As I understand it, when you ingest a whole load of food or drink a whole load of water, you immediately lose all that acidity, because there's not an awful lot of acid in your stomach. It's only about 25 mils, I think.
Yeah, your stomach just produces what it needs and when it needs it. But yeah, so the protein's going to get attacked by the acid. You've got all the enzymes that are being produced once what you've eaten has gone through your stomach and it's gone into your intestines. It's hitting all the enzymes, and so the prion will have needed to survive that process to then be absorbed into your bloodstream, in your in your gut, and then from there it goes off and starts causing its damage.
Because I've never understood how it manages to evade digestion and how it manages to be absorbed intact. But whether it can only get in if there's a rupture in the gut, like an ulcer or something, I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some research.
I think it's the illnesses that hits our brain and are contagious are probably the ones you should fear after the flu, because I think it would be really scary to see someone basically disappear within themselves by the brain being degenerated.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of my great granddad actually, because I one of my great granddads survived long enough was alive long enough for me to know, and he went poorly a few years after the BSE thing, and we weren't. I know when he died, because he'd been starting to go a little bit funny, possibility that it might have been some sort of Alzheimer's, but they'd done a scan on him, and I think not long before, not long after he died, and it showed that there was the possibility of some holes forming in the brain, and that's the thing that's caused the problem in these spongy things, is it destroys the structure of your brain.
Yeah, it does. As someone's pointed out, it makes it into a sponge, basically.
Yeah, that's why it's called bovine spongiform.
Encephalopathy.
Yeah,
well,
and encephalopathy thing means it relates to the brain.
Alzheimer works in a similar way, and that's also why I think there's a lot of research going into prions to figure out how they work, because Alzheimer's also a thing that basically also destroys the brain physically. So when the damage is done, we can't revert it. So basically what we're trying to do today is to see if we can find it. Just like cancer, you want to screen people for it and see if we could get to it fast enough so we could get the medicine out there to slow it down. We can't remove it, but we could slow it down.
Yeah.
And people who develop Alzheimer's tend to be around the age of 60 and upwards. And if you could slow it down, they could live out their natural life and not
with just only mild effects.
Exactly. My great-grandmother, sort of, my family is sort of complicated. She became like 90 billion years old or something like that. She had Alzheimer's at the last, and it is a weird thing because I remember visiting her, and I only visited her like once a year, and I could notice like how she could recognize me less and less and less, because she one of the last persons she only could recognize at the end was my mother, who took care of her because she has a training of taking care of old people and so on. But at the very end, she started confusing my mother with my grandmother, basically calling her the same name because they look very much alike, and I think that's a scary thing. And I personally think if I ever get hit by that, I would like to tell my family to end my misery if I come to a point where I can't take care of myself.
Yeah, my own grandmother actually died of she died of pneumonia, but she had Alzheimer's, and she was really bad. And when she left, when she died, we were just relieved, sad definitely, but at the same time relieved, because she couldn't talk. She had no idea who we were. She had to be helped to walk, helped to eat her food. She had lost complete independence, which was it's probably one of the most scariest things I've ever seen. Just to lose that independence.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, but it's one of the things also when you go into the topic of pandemic, because when you say pandemic, the first that comes to people's mind are zombies. And
well, I was about to come on to this one. I think it's about time we dropped the silly curtain and got onto the issue of zombies.
I would say one of the things, if we also talk about plausible zombieism, I don't think that reanimating dead bodies would be possible, because you need something to take over the metabolism and motor skills and so on. It's not something that just could happen with a virus.
Oh, is this zombies?
Yes.
What if I would say a zombie pandemic scenario would be something similar to the rage virus, basically a virus or a bacterial infection or parasite that
the rage virus from 28 days later.
Sort of,
where it degenerates your brain to a part where you only run by basic instincts, basically back to the almost only reptilian part of your brain, where you only go for like food, sex, and sleep.
Fight or flight minus the flight. Yeah, but
it's I know in the Resident Evil game and films, the T virus, if it's a scenario where the T virus has got into a living host, I could see that taking over the person and doing the whole stuff with them, because it's a living person, it's hijacking living processes. But again, in a dead body, I don't see how it could do the reanimation thing. Zombies are the whole kind of...
I think the closest thing we'll ever get to real zombies is going to be at a Justin Bieber fan club. I know saying that I'm probably going to get some stick in the chat room.
It'd be pretty simple, actually, to make up.
Yeah, anybody who defends Justin Bieber in the chat is getting kicked. I'm sorry.
It's inexcusable.
No, I was going to say that I'm not going to go in on the issue of reanimating the dead for a second, but the idea of an infection changing the host's mind is not exactly an alien concept. There is a certain parasitic, not sure whether it's a worm or I think it's a worm.
Not mushroom, but spores that infect insects, for example, like but they're very specialized. They go for particular species.
And this fungus tricks the ant into climbing up to a nice exposed place, at which point the ant dies and a toadstool grows out of its head. I'm not making any of this up. And now the fungus is in a nice high position where it can distribute more spores. The other one is a parasitic, I think it's a worm, but it infects slugs as they slime over the top of them.
I'm sure I've heard of something that's the same to a species of wasp.
Or maybe it is. There's something that infects this slug. I can't remember what it is. I should have done my homework.
Well, we have parasites that actually do change humans, human behavior. If you get like ingestive worms, for example, it will change your behavior to start to eat more and more. It's not like it's changing your brain, but your body will feel more hunger because
you're not getting as many nutrients. And Colin's put a picture up of the ant with the fungus growing out of its head.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
It looks like it's got a brain halfway through. You can imagine this being a right little zombified little fungus thing going out, going, ha-ha, world domination.
But the other one that's even cooler is this one that infects this snail, because it not only makes it crawl up into a nice exposed position where it can easily be eaten by birds, but it also makes its eye stalks swell and start pulsating so they look like maggots. And so a bird will come along, eat one of the eye stalks off this slug, and then poo out the worm in another place, and so it can infect another one.
I think any pictures of that?
Let me see if I can find you one.
Provided tech guy, Colin, with a picture of this?
Yeah, the movie, I don't know whether or not we can get that to play on screen. There is a YouTube video about this. Let's see if I can find it. But
it's the tech guy is working away.
It's probably the closest thing in the real world to a zombie infection.
I think what.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that there's a certain parasite that lives in about 50% of the humans that are alive on the planet, and it doesn't have much of an effect to us. But in rats, it causes rats to either have no reaction to or be attracted to the scent of cat urine, because it survives. It reproduces in the digestive tract of cats.
So we need to get this parasite and spread it all across infested cities. And that, should hopefully take care of that problem. And then we can just hold out and just wait to see whether or not we've done anything that will have then mutated into something that will affect humans later on.
But yeah, if you look at Blog TV now, just gone now, there was the slug with its horrendous pulsating eye stalks.
So they look like wrong. Maggots. I mean, regulars that know exactly how my mind works can probably guess what kind of sick things my mind is coming up with right now in relation to looking at that picture.
But as I say, it tricks them into being eaten so that they can pass on the parasite.
Tasty yummies.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the rats.
Awesome. Dang, nature, you were scary.
Hey, nature, you were scary.
So, pandemics, we've discussed them a little bit. We've got a little bit of time left. Well, I guess the next thing is, how can we beat a pandemic? I was going to say, how can we beat a pandemic? Are they beatable?
Well, I was going to say it might be quite nice to just quickly stop scaremongering and remind people how unlikely it is that a zombie apocalypse would actually
there is a brilliant cracked article about why these things
There is,
happen.
and I'm looking at it now.
Link it in chat. I are whale boss.
First page.
Like these infections are very specialized to one particular species. And if there would be a parasite or a virus that could do this to humans, it would have to evolve alongside us, basically having a need to occupy our bodies. And so far, there's nothing in nature that does that. Then one could claim, well, some military organism could develop such a thing. But as Kitch pointed out, even creating something like the AIDS or the HIV virus is something that is far beyond our reach. And creating something that would be able to mess with our behavior in such a sense that we be mindless zombies, I would say it's very, very unlikely.
Yeah, we're not going to see any actual zombie apocalypse anytime soon even. Although, to be honest, most of us, if one happened, would be just so busy geeking out at first that it was actually happening that we may or may not get caught out by a zombie because we're too busy geeking. I think Yosh had something to quickly wrap up.
I was going to say that all you have to do to get a good infecting zombifying virus is all you have to do is get a virus or a bacteria or parasite or something that destroys the brain's ability to absorb certain chemicals or enhances its ability to absorb certain chemicals, and it would completely change the person. It could turn them into a mindless instinctual run creature.
So it's kind of like engineered psychopathy. In other words, if it prevents people from, if it inhibits like their frontal lobe, which is kind of the inhibitory part of the brain, it stops you from doing all the things that you're thinking of doing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, as creating psychopaths, but that's not really what, if you say zombie, what people think about.
Yeah, it's not a traditional zombie. But then,
like
if you look at
eating machines,
if you look at 28 Days Later, they were traditional zombies, but the rage virus did completely override anything other than this rage and wanting to lash out. Yeah, which is the
you
fast
could
zombie.
say that as we talked about earlier, these brain degenerating diseases, they do actually create sort of like a zombie, because at the later stages, people can't. The brain is sort of so damaged that it's basically run by basic instincts, and then it just further develops, and you basically can't take care of yourself, and perhaps even have some body functions slowing down or stopping completely.
One thing that does scare me, though, is if something could destroy the brain's ability to absorb dopamine, because then that's your body's rewarding drug. It makes you want to do stuff. It makes you enjoy things. It gives you motivation to do stuff. And if
So you wouldn't, it'd be you'd have no desire to do anything as such.
It would be like the most extreme case of depression possible.
Well, there's this
on top
one
of that,
guy.
On top of that, that's your natural painkiller too. So if you get injured, it's just going to keep hurting until it completely heals.
Well, there's this one guy I saw in a BBC documentary about our brain, who was in an accident where he no longer can feel any emotions, for example. He can still remember how they felt like, but he can no longer experience it again. And it had some interesting effect when they put him against some test about risk calculations and like intuition test and so on. And it does completely change him. And he said also he feared what will eventually happen as he grows older. He's like in his 30s. Like imagine him at 60s, how faint these memories of emotions will be. But one thing is that I don't think he would feel depressed either. He would just be a shell, basically. He was able to reason and use logic, but he couldn't use his emotions at all. He was basically turned into a they're called now Spock guy, Vulcan, basically. Spock guy.
Although Vulcans did feel emotion, they just
exactly,
they just stiff up a lip the whole way.
They're just very stoic, very British.
Yes.
No, it's terrible business.
We're going
40
quite
people
off
died.
track now, though, with the pandemics and talking about Vulcans. But aside from the fact that certain pandemics, like virus causing zombies and things like that, they're not likely to happen, as are space infecting pandemics that sometimes the film industry like to throw at us. But effectively dealing with a pandemic, so long as you take certain precautions, isn't actually going to be anything that causes a problem. I mean, as we discussed earlier, the flu epidemic or flu pandemic, bird flu even, and how various things were done by governments to try and prevent it spreading. And it shows how actively, if someone is able to act quickly enough, these things can be easy to deal with.
But how do you protect against the alien from the eponymous film? Because John Hurt was wearing a space helmet, a space suit.
That's
it melted its way through the space suit.
Yeah, that lone alien organism. That's not a pandemic in terms of microbiology.
Are they like the Slitheen? Because I know the Slitheen were basic animals, so you could defeat them with acid.
Have you been on crack?
I've been on crack. It's my birthday. I'm allowed to be on crack.
That one time of the year.
Yeah.
It's crack day.
That and crack day, yeah.
Yeah. Let's keep ourselves on the thing.
But I would say that it depends on the pandemic and the I can't remember what you call it. It's the stages where the virus or infection does not show any symptoms or can be traced. Incubation period. Yes. You have the same issue with HIV. That's also why it's also you like when you get infected, it's only traceable after I think it's 3 weeks or so, or even further. And
detectable.
And the same thing with the flu. That it's really hard to detect when it's in the system, and we only detect it when it's active, basically. So it can lie dormant. And I would say if a virus or bacteria had like an incubation period of, let's say, a year or so, imagine how many people it could infect, and then suddenly it could burst out, regardless of how much organized a country is. It's going to create chaos. It's going to flood the hospitals to a point where it will basically go to martial law and isolating people. Basically, that will be the last line of defense.
And there's it gets even more interesting when you have carriers, people who aren't actually people who won't suffer from any symptoms of having this organism and can pass it on.
Well, it's
like
to go back to I mean, I was going to pull back to the film source, like in the whole thing behind 28 Weeks Later was this woman had become infected with the rage virus, but she had this freak mutation in her DNA that meant that she wasn't made rage-filled, and then Robert Carlyle buggered everything up when he went to kiss her.
Yeah, silly bugger.
Yeah.
Probably the worst thing he's ever done. The question that kind of arises from that with regards to the incubation period is, does that then mean that pandemics are unavoidable? In other words, is there nothing that we can do to prevent it?
I think it depends on what sort of the infection is you're going to be looking at. If you've got a short incubation period, you can be relatively able to get it under control, so long as you can track the spread of a disease. I mean, if anyone that's ever watched the film Outbreak, that's a good sort of case study, as it were, for how you can deal with an infectious disease. I mean, I know there's a new film that's come out recently. I'm not sure if it's out yet in the cinema. Contagion, yeah.
Contagion.
Contagion.
One thing is, those movies start out, they tend to be about epidemics, and I think that they are easier to fight. But as soon as a disease become a pandemic, it gets harder to fight because you need to coordinate with other countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only real difference between an epidemic and a pandemic is the number of countries involved. It's still the same, going to be the same sort of spreading patterns and things like that, you know, coughs and sneezes or whatever, depending on what sort of disease it is, and it's the vectors that they talk about.
But it's hard to contain it within the countries when you have different laws, different boundary systems.
Yeah, I mean, there was the thing with SARS. It was actually in 2 or 3 different countries, and different countries had different responses.
Exactly. Some countries would just flat out not acknowledge they have a problem. Like China, for example, every time they have a major outbreak of something, they try to deny it and see if they can fix it before the media gets a hand on it. And then when it actually gets out of their hand, it's actually a far worse problem than if they actually were open about it and told people to take precautions, it could be avoided to lesser casualties.
Yeah, and then you have countries. And then you have countries that went overboard, and do things that aren't even remotely effective like what Egypt did during the swine flu epidemic about 2 years ago.
Killing all the pigs.
Yeah, which didn't make any sense when you actually understood how the virus was getting around.
But that was mostly just because they wanted to get at the Christian population of Egypt. They had an excuse basically to bully them. Because it was the Christian population of Egypt. It's one of their economy because selling pigs to each other because it's so hard to get pork amongst the Christians. So when they just killed off all the pigs in Egypt, basically, it hurt the Christians. And I think the Egyptian government is not stupid. They have universities and highly educated people. They were informed that this wouldn't have any impact on the disease. So I think it was a political thing that wasn't really going after the disease, but basically just to harass another religion in the area that they didn't like.
Yeah, I had to go there during when that was happening, and there was no sausages in the country when I was there on the holiday. And every Friday during the morning, it was just no sausages, no rashers. I was like, oh, why? Really annoyed.
The horror.
The horror.
I'd be fine. I don't like sausages anyway.
But yeah, as I open up the pandemic thing with the kitchens thing, that's also another issue, religion coming in and fighting against governments trying to prevent it. Some would say it's God's judgment and we should let the God do his work and actively embrace it, etc. So that is also a thing that needs to be dealt with when it comes to dealing with it.
One of the most famous cases of that I know of is, I think it was the church coming out against vaccines when they came out.
Where was
because
this?
They saw it. It was I'm trying to remember now because I remembered hearing this in immunology. It was when vaccines were start going around.
So way back in the day.
So when you say the church, you mean the Roman Catholic Church or
yes,
the Anglican?
The Roman Catholic Church. It would have been the Roman Catholic Church. It was in Europe. They saw, as you said, these diseases are God's judgment, and these vaccines were a way of fighting God's judgment, as it was viewed. I may have gotten some things wrong, but that was the first day in immunology last year.
Yeah. That's also what Hitchens writes in his chapter about religion and its impact on health in society.
I've just been reading though about a certain corner of your beloved home country Ireland, Kitch, whereby the fishermen have a superstition whereby if somebody falls into the water, it's considered bad luck to rescue them, but it's also considered bad luck for that person to try and swim to safety by themselves. So basically, if you fall in the sea, you are obliged to drown.
That's random.
Find me never to be
So I wouldn't necessarily, listen to these kinds of superstitions and.
Oh, really?
Especially that one.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell that one to the Irish Water Safety Board.
In the event of emergency, drown.
Yes.
Take one for the team.
Yeah.
It would be funny.
But yeah, it just irritates me that it's people in those kinds of positions that are able to spread the lies that. Well, I say lies. Obviously, I can't say it's an absolute lie, but the notion that vaccines are against God's will.
Yes, because
I suppose the bottom line for me is I'd rather take a chance.
I was going to say, from their point of view, God created all things equally and all that kind of stuff. And, God obviously then must have created all the viruses and that. And, it's God's punishment for our sin or some strange notion.
Hey,
over here in America,
God's punishing his favourite organism. Come on. Bacteria and viruses are clearly more better than us at surviving and reproducing.
Well, over here in America, I've never heard anyone make at least I've never heard anyone in power make the argument that we shouldn't vaccinate because it's against God's will. But Then again, over here that'd be kind of illegal.
Well, in America, you have the other people, a bit of off topic, that say we should not fight against climate change because that's God's will.
No, that's human stupidity for burning too much fossil fuels and releasing carbon dioxide too quickly.
Yeah.
No, God's will.
Right.
Easier to explain.
I am looking forward to the day that Craig Venter does actually lose it and decides that he's going to try and create his own disease to see if it can outcompete natural ones. I think he will. I think he'll eventually just lose it, possibly from all the media pressure.
I wonder if you could fight a pandemic with another pandemic. Like if we could engineer a virus or bacteria that fought the other virus or bacteria.
It's not as bizarre as you think. I mean,
then we're opening ourselves up to an I Am Legend scenario.
I was going to say, first of all, there's I Am Legend, where there was a designer virus created to target cancer. But I think
it turned people into vampires.
There has been some talk. I'll see if I can't remember off the top of my head where it was, but there has been some talk in scientific news recently of the idea of fighting a virus with another virus. And I think there's an enormous potential for bacterial infections, partially because we're getting to the point now where none of our antibiotics work because we've been rather careless with them.
Or not necessarily we. Well, no, we have. Individuals
well, if you get
as well
antibiotics over the counter in the United States, I think that's crazy.
Got to be prescription.
Beyond crazy at this stage.
Yeah, but I mean, for instance, there's a separate class of viruses called the bacteriophages, which only infect bacteria, and the likelihood of them hopping the species boundary to humans is negligible, but pretty much zero.
Because there's such a big span between our species, well, our organisms.
Yeah, there's so much that's different between us in just about every single aspect. But and I think that there's an enormous potential in that for using bacteriophage viruses to tackle human bacterial infections, simply because there isn't a risk associated with them crossing the species boundary, and of course they will hopefully evolve with the bacterium. So
the other way around then? If we created a bacteria, because we have been able to synthesize life now, and what if you could create a bacteria that would make the virus in the system attack the bacteria rather than the human body? Do you think you could put on markers on the bacteria that could go make it more attackable by the virus?
You'd have to make a receptor that has a greater affinity, and even still, viruses would still, just by pure Brownian motion in the that's just for the people who don't know what Brownian motion is, just random
you get a bit
of molecules in a solution. The virus will still happen to bind to a receptor of a human cell, and normally, and the result of that is you'll have more viruses because you've increased the cells, the amount of cells that the virus can infect. If anyone wants to come in on that, if I've fucked up majorly on that one.
No. I don't think we can.
Not sure where we're going there.
Just awkward silence.
They happen every so often. Hicks is moaning that he said the name of an atrocious film when I kicked him earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. Since we have to wrap up the show pretty soon, I want to point out, anyone please go out. Wamba wants you to watch the film 2012.
No,
and then
I
email
don't.
her how you felt about the
It's an
movie.
atrocious
The email is womble@SkepticTV.
No, I will hunt you down and beat you up myself. You're going to die a peasant's death.
It was.
You've got about a year left to watch it. You've only got a year left to watch it before it actually happens. So.
I'd say that's true.
On your next birthday, I'm going to send you the special edition version, director's cut and everything.
Oh.
You can tell her how the geological conditions were perfect.
No, I'm going to kill you all.
You sent me the Quran. I'm going to send you 2012.
Hey, you wanted me to send you that.
Oh, you want 2012?
Can I just say,
wait,
while...
One more thing. Womble@SkepticTV.net.
You are all going to die.
I'll just say, while we're still on the subject of the apocalypse, we are thinking of having a special Skeptic TV next Friday after next, I should say. That will be the 21st of October. We will hopefully be
Friday.
Yes, we will hopefully be broadcasting as normal on the 22nd, the day after, but we're hoping to do 1 hour's live coverage of the date on which Harold Camping, for those who remember him, said that Armageddon would begin.
Last time we were Rapture Watch. This time it's Armageddon.
So the Rapture doesn't seem to have happened. So, yeah, this time it's the end of the world, baby.
I want to bring up a last point, and I'm not going to talk more before I say goodbye. I put up the trailer for the show, and someone told me that we're being zombieist bigots. He writes, there are many examples of brain-dead people going on and lead productive lives. Look at the government. Look at the established church. Look at Darwell Films. Embrace it.
That's a little bit unfair. But that is a little connection to the final thing I'm going to say as sort of nominal host of today's show is we're going to do a quick plug for a show that's starting. I'm not sure if it's starting, if it's today or in 2 weeks' time, but it looks like whenever we have a show, this group have a show and they're going to start it straight after us. It's in 2 weeks. It's called the Gin and Tonic Show, and it's going to have the Rationalizer and Almighty Atheismo, and they're going to be criticising Islam. So it's not going to be Islam bashing, but criticising various aspects.
That's right. I've only watched Thunderfoot.
I'd also like to
no Pat Condells or Thunderfoots allowed.
I'd also like to bring attention to the newest pandemic that's currently sweeping the planet. It's commonly known as the game. And,
yes, in Skeptic TV we have an inoculation program that we are trialing with our people, our members that have succumbed.
Good job.
And I'm having a rather bad reaction.
The video.
Luckily, Lewis isn't here to hear that.
I believe I've
Someone
built up
should
a
text
resistance.
him right now.
We'll just.
Yeah, everyone that's listening, go to Lewis's YouTube channel and just go the game.
You bastards, all of you.
Yeah.
Shall we just quickly do another plug for those who weren't here at the start of the show for our show in December?
I was just gonna move on to that. But if you've got any suggestions of content or guests for our special birthday show that we're going to hopefully put out and do something amazing on the Saturday 10th of December, email sound. Also, if you can have a look and you see any items that you think might be good for your the SSA in the United States.
I'm not sure whether you called for that.
Sound.
I'll just quickly take over. Just for those of you who weren't aware, we're doing a 12-hour show on December the 10th to raise money for the Secular Student Alliance, and we're hopefully going to have the show spread across 3 continents, and we're a little bit short on ideas for presenters to take the show on the Down Under stretch, so people who are living in New Zealand or Australia. So we're looking for your suggestions on that. Also, just a little reminder to start keeping your eye out for anything that you think might be worth auctioning for charity. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got it spare and you think you're not going to use it, or you think that it would make a great eBay item, then just contact me. That's sound@skeptictv.net, or contact me through my YouTube channel or through Skype. My username on Skype is the same.
Yes,
that's
what
what I've got to
summarize. Pandemics can exist, but so far we don't have a big one coming up. Nephilim Free is back on YouTube, and Womble wants you to watch 2012 and send her what you think about it.
I am
Womble
going
at
to hunt you down
skeptictv.net.
and kill you. There is going to be stories told of what I do to you.
We're going to strap him to a chair and show him Neff 24/7.
Yeah, there we go. We can include a Blu-ray copy of 2012 signed by Womble.
With or without the bite marks and signs of otherwise destroying it.
In the case of the film returning, I would have to disagree with Chris on the whole. There's no upcoming pandemics. There is a pandemic of brain damage from people banging their heads against the desk.
Sorry, that's probably a little bit inappropriate to Google there. Okay, so yes, we replugged our birthday special. Send us any suggestions or ideas or whatnot, and it's now all to saying thank you to our host. I'd like to say thank you to the people. They've gone now, but we had our 2 callers, so I'd like to thank them. We had Kitch join us part way through, so thank you to Kitch. And then we've had Tilson joining us, and behind the scenes we've had Tech Guy Colin and Dutch Liam doing our moderating and tech guy, and we've had Sound Yosh and Bear with us today.
Womble at SkepticTV.net.
We'll put you down.
So all that's left to say is goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye. And we'll
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
See you in 2 weeks' time.